Melyssa Ford reveals her co-host was talking to her ops behind her back.
It was really coming to a head like the week before, because that's when I started to hear a little bit more about, I'm going to use a legal term, ex parte communication that was happening on the side. And if I revealed to you who she was talking to, y'all would gag.
Because no one needs to gag.
And threatens to sue Danny from the stop. That's right, y'all. It's going down as far as Melyssa Ford is concerned. She was on Twitter Spaces and she said something that was really interesting. She said that her co-host S was talking to someone behind her back, and that if anybody knew who that was, it would be shocking. Now, there's a couple of suspects that people are considering, and one of those is Ish. Was Ish the secret confidant of S? If you don't remember, S was a co-host for an episode of the Joe Budden Patreon, and her and Ish had some type of chemistry, and while it was a put-on, I think it was rooted in some reality where they were probably attracted to each other. She was attracted to him, and it got so bad that Melyssa Ford started hating and started to mention how Ish had a girl and this and that. And if you notice, anytime Melyssa Ford is talking about how her podcast broke up on the podcast, Ish is quiet as a mouse.
No more Ish and Mel pod. Wait a minute. How do you even know that that was even like being contemplated? And I'll say it right now. It ain't because of me. Ish can be the first guest. Maybe, or maybe not. I have other plans.
And don't anybody take me literally with these words, but one monkey don't stop the circus.
He don't say a damn thing. Also, another theory about who this might be is Mandy. Could it be Mandy is the one orchestrating the plays? Mandy set up the plays to end the Menopod podcast, the podcast that never was. And that could be a possibility. You know, Mandy stays involved in Melyssa Ford's business. Everybody seems to dislike Melyssa Ford. A lot of the women in the industry feel like she is two-faced, like she presents as a girl's girl on camera, but then when she's behind the scenes, there's instances of her hating. We look at S with Ish. Remember when Ish and S were interacting, she was hating, mentioning his girl. Also, there was the Buffy the Body situation.
The only one and I'm not going to say I had beef with her. She had beef with me, was Melyssa Ford.
Melyssa Ford.
What was the issue?
It was when we did the 5th anniversary issue for King magazine, when all us was on the cover. It was like 5 covers.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
When I got to LA to do the shoot, she didn't know that I was the 5th girl. So when I got there, her whole attitude changed. She never spoke to me. She was walking around the shoot slamming doors and just acting real ugly.
Remember, she was hating on Buffy the Body on the set of some type of picture she was taking with Maya, and all these people like, she shouldn't be here, she's Buffy the Body. Also, she doesn't have kind words to say about Corinne Steffens. There seems to be a holier than thou thing going on, and only time will reveal who S may have been talking to behind the scenes. Now, like I said before, it appears to be that a lot of people think it's Ish, and I do think Ish is one of them. Can't spell Ish without S. I do think that there's some type of conversations going on, but who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments. We're detectives here. Please connect the dots. And I also wanted to talk about something else involving podcast. The Need to Know has taken ownership of Mandy's Full Court Studios. Now we need to really look at what's going on with Mandy, y'all, because I'm noticing Mandy I know she was moving to Atlanta or something from New York soon. Like, she did say that. But I'm looking at her podcast, period, sis, and it seems to be struggling. Like, who watches that? And I think it shows the pitfalls of making a podcast that is too hyper-specific to an audience. I don't hear no woman talking about that podcast. I don't hear no man talking about that podcast. It must have cost a lot of money to execute. It is nowhere near as successful as See the Thing is. And she also has transferred ownership of Full Court Studios to the Need to Know podcast, which is probably seamless because the Need to Know records out of there. And I do wonder how much money is going to be made, because oftentimes when we talk about this podcast, recession, we always speak about people at the top. But what about the rank and file people in media? What about them? What about the person who just has no audience, wants to start a podcast, has to pay $500 to record? They probably like, nah, man, I ain't doing that. So I do wonder how the Need to Know is going to drum up the business. And to be quite honest, anytime I recorded that Full Court Studios, there was always an issue. We would be delayed for like 40 minutes to an hour. Of course, they would allow me to record after that time, the 2 hours that I booked. But anytime I went there, I started to think it was intentional. I started to think Mandy put in the call like, hey, make it hard for Danny when you go to the studio because, I ain't with what he's saying in his videos. I thought that was what was happening. So hopefully the Need to Know can shape up that studio. I have my doubts if they will be able to run it properly, but time will tell. Melyssa Ford threatening to sue people or threatening to have legalities involved because of what people were saying about her podcast and whatnot. I don't know maybe she was feeling sensitive, but I don't think she was talking correctly. I mean, she's out here throwing her weight around like she's successful. Like, I don't think Melyssa Ford can be moving like this. She's not budding. You have no episodes. You ain't put in that work. And your previous podcast, For All the Foodies, I don't know how successful that was. I can't even really see what the numbers were like that. Like, let me pull up the numbers so I can talk from a more informative point of view and get to the bottom of this. The Hot and Bothered podcast, which used to be For All the Foodies. Oh, she removed all the old videos. So, yeah, I can't even see what those views are. And she's out here acting like she's the Joe Rogan. And I don't know, there's going to be consequences to that. People are watching Melyssa Ford and think she's moving wonky. And time will tell how things play out. I see she's launched her own Melyssa Ford community on Twitter Spaces and Twitter communities and all that stuff. And I have to say, she's kind of coming off like a copycat. She copied Sleepers. Joe probably hit her through the back channels, be like, change that. You change the name now. And it became Melodies. She copied Hot and Bothered. She allegedly took the Manopod name from S. And now she's just co-opting all of Joe's spaces while being on the Joe Budden podcast. We're going to have to monitor this, y'all. I don't like what I'm seeing. And I'll be here watching, waiting, commiserating. But let me know what you think. Who do you think is the secret confidant that S has that we all know? Is it Ish? Is it Mandy? Is it Rocky Thunder? Could be anybody. All right, y'all. Follow me on Instagram to Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter to Stop TV. Follow me on Reddit, Joe Budden Network. And most importantly, please remember to always do the science. This is Danny from the Stop. Peace.